Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are bringing you the ultimate master checklist for whipping up an authentic Thai spicy pork cartilage soup, which you probably know as Tom Saep. If you've ever felt that, beginner anxiety about getting those complex flavors and timings exactly right, you are in the perfect place. We're taking an incredible cooking guide from the culinary channel Kin Dai Aro Due and transforming it into a super quick, easy-to-follow visual framework. So no more guesswork, just a perfect, mellow, incredibly flavorful soup every single time.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our structural framework for today. We'll kick things off with the beginner's rules, move into tender pork techniques, and then unpack the herb sequence. After that, we'll look at layering the flavors, and finally, finishing spice and serving. Think of this as your quick reference checklist to mastering that well-rounded flavor profile without spending hours in the kitchen. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Beginner's Tom Saep Rules, taking a look at the overall process.
So it's time to shift your mindset a bit. Great Thai cooking at home? It's really not about stressful, hyper-strict measurements. It's entirely about the process. Here are your foundational ingredients, and honestly, I want to reassure you right now, these components are simple, accessible, and very forgiving for beginners. We've got our pork cartilage, our bold aromatics like galangal and lemongrass, kaffir lime leaves and shallots, then some tomatoes, cilantro, and spring onion, chilies for that heat, and your standard seasonings, fish sauce, tamarind, lime, and salt. Seriously, do not be intimidated by this list. It's just about knowing the order of operations.
And that brings us to your very first absolute foundational rule. The secret to a gorgeous, clear broth all comes down to heat management. You have to simmer the soup gently on a medium-low heat, and you need to continuously skim the fat and foam right off the surface. Now, why does this matter so much? Well, if you let that pot hit a violent rolling boil, the fats will literally emulsify into the water. That aggressive boil ruins the visual appeal, turns your soup super cloudy, and completely changes the refined texture of the broth. So keep it gentle. Moving right along to Section 2, Techniques for Tender Pork, where we build our base. This is where we establish the very first physical layer of our soup, creating that base texture and that deep, savory meat flavor. Here is your mini checklist for the pork. Step 1, boil your water until it's rolling. Step 2, add the cleaned pork cartilage. Step 3, add a pinch of salt. Step 4, simmer for 45 to 90 minutes. Actually, pause on Step 3 for a second. Adding that pinch of salt early in the boiling phase is absolutely crucial. By doing this, you're allowing that baseline savory flavor to seep deep down into the meat's fibers while it tenderizes, rather than just floating around in salty water. Now, you might be looking at that 45 to 90-minute window and thinking, okay, well, which is it? Check out this quote straight from our source material. As a beginner, you are in total control here. Perfection isn't some strict rule from a recipe book. It's based entirely on what kind of texture you actually like to eat. If you want a bit of a chew, pull it at 45 minutes. If you want it literally melting in your mouth, let it go for an hour and a half.
All right, Section 3, the herb sequence and aromatics timing.
Now, what's really interesting about this timeline, and honestly, this is arguably the most critical phase of our entire explainer, is the strict chronological sequence for the vegetables and herbs. Getting this right is how you build that perfectly mellow, well-rounded flavor. At minute 0, right when you're ready to season, in goes the galangal, kaffir lime, lemongrass, and shallots. Let those boil and release their oils for about 3 to 5 minutes. Only then do you drop in the tomatoes. And check out the bottom line. Cilantro and spring onions? Those don't go in until the heat is completely off. So what's the actual culinary reasoning behind that 3 to 5 minute delay on the tomatoes? It's simple, but it's a game changer. If you toss the tomatoes in right at the start with those hard, woody herbs, they're going to break down completely. You'll end up turning your beautiful, clear broth into a thick, mushy tomato puree by the time the herbs even become fragrant. Delaying the tomatoes ensures they soften just enough while staying perfectly chunky. It's just a brilliant way to respect the ingredients.
Okay, let's slide right into Section 4, layering the flavors for perfect taste balancing.
Time to shift our mindset toward the actual art of taste balancing. If you want those perfect seasoning proportions, especially as a beginner, use this foolproof sequential method. First, your base savory notes come from the salt we already added during the pork boil. Second, you build depth and sourness by adding fish sauce and tamarind juice directly into the simmering broth. Finally, that fresh zing comes from the lime juice, added strictly off-heat. By layering these 3 phases one by one, you safely build up to a perfectly mellow, complex soup without ever overwhelming the pot.
And this right here brilliantly illustrates a massive beginner trap. Look at this side by side. If you're using liquid tamarind juice, no problem. Add it smoothly right during that main boiling phase we just covered. But if you're working with thick, chunky tamarind paste, you absolutely must add it much earlier in the boiling process. Why? Because the paste literally needs time and heat to break down and disperse into the water. So your ingredient prep directly dictates your timing.
Home stretch, Section 5, finishing spice and serving the soup.
So the crucial point I want to leave you with is what happens after the stove is turned off. Take a look at these vibrant finishing ingredients: crushed fresh chilies, roasted dried chilies, cilantro, spring onion, and fresh lime juice. Every single one of these items must be added strictly off the heat. Once your soup is perfectly balanced and the fire is out, that is when the magic enters the bowl.
Let's break down the chemistry behind this for a second, especially for the lime juice. Squeezing fresh lime juice into a violently boiling pot instantly destroys its volatile oils. You lose all that fresh, vibrant aroma. But worse than that, the high heat alters the chemical structure and actually turns your beautiful soup bitter. So, non-negotiable rule for beginners: to keep that bright, zesty punch, always add your lime juice off the heat.
And there you have it, your ultimate master checklist for the perfect Tom Saep. You know the boil structure, the exact vegetable sequence, and how to balance those tricky flavors. So I want to leave you with this final thought. How are you going to customize your own personal bowl? Are you going for the smoky, complex depth of roasted chilies, the sharp, immediate bite of fresh chilies, or maybe a daring mix of both? You're totally empowered to experiment now. Thanks so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see what we learn together next time.